Hello and welcome to Calm Mind, a place where thoughts are allowed to slow down. You don't need to make anything happen or arrive anywhere. Right now, your only invitation is to be here. Just this. Just you. Just resting. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw release. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy in their own time. No rush. Let's close the door on the day together and begin. Tonight, we address something that might be keeping you awake right now. A belief so deeply ingrained that you might not even recognize it as a belief. You might think it's just truth. The belief that rest is quitting. That stopping means giving up. That if you're not constantly pushing, constantly striving, constantly working towards something, you're failing. You're weak. You're letting everyone down. And so even now, even as you lie here in bed, even though your body is exhausted and your mind is weary, there might be a voice saying, "You shouldn't be resting. There's too much to do. You're wasting time. You're being lazy." If these gentle journeys are meaningful to you, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a reflection below. It helps other restless minds find their way here. But for now, your only task is to relax. Tonight, we're going to dismantle that belief. We're going to explore the difference between rest and quitting, between strategic pause and permanent surrender, between honoring your limits and giving up on what matters. Because here's the truth, rest is not quitting. Rest is not weakness. Rest is not failure. Rest is how you sustain. Rest is how you endure. Rest is how you keep going when the journey is long. You might know this voice well, the one that won't let you rest, the one that keeps you going even when you're depleted. It's the voice that says, "Just one more thing. Just finish this. Just get through today. You can rest later, when everything's done, when you've proven yourself, when you've earned it." But everything is never done. You never quite prove yourself enough. You never quite earn the right to rest. So the later never comes. And meanwhile, you keep going, keep pushing, keep driving yourself forward even as your body begs for pause, even as your mind pleads for stillness, even as every part of you is screaming for rest. Because the fear is too strong. The fear that if you stop, if you rest, if you let yourself pause, you'll lose momentum. You'll fall behind. You'll prove that you're not strong enough, capable enough, worthy enough. Or worse, you'll prove that you don't actually care, that you're not committed, that when things get hard, you quit. And that's unbearable, because you do care. You're deeply committed. You're not a quitter. So you keep going. You push through. You refuse to stop because stopping would mean you've become something you swore you'd never be. But there's a cost to never stopping. A cost you're probably feeling right now. The exhaustion isn't just physical, though your body aches. It's not just mental, though your mind is foggy. It's deeper than that. It's soul-tired, bone-weary. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't quite fix, because it's not just about hours of rest. It's about months or years of never truly resting. There's the cost to your health. Your body needs rest to repair, to restore, to maintain itself. When you chronically deprive it of rest, things break down. Your immune system weakens. Your stress hormones stay elevated. Your body stays in a constant state of emergency response. There's the cost to your effectiveness. You might think you're being productive by never stopping, but exhausted work is not good work. Depleted effort is not efficient effort. You're putting in more hours but getting less done because you're operating at a fraction of your capacity. There's the cost to your relationships. When you're running on empty, you have nothing left to give. You're irritable. You're unavailable. You're physically present but emotionally absent. The people you love get the leftovers of you, not the fullness of you. And there's the cost to your spirit, to the part of you that feels joy, that experiences meaning, that connects with beauty and wonder. When you're always in doing mode, always striving, always pushing, you lose access to being. You lose the capacity to simply exist, to appreciate, to be present to life as it's happening. You become a machine, an efficiency robot. All output, no input. All giving, no receiving. All motion, no rest. And eventually, machines break down. You're not a machine. You're a human being. And human beings need rest. Not as a luxury, not as a reward, as a biological, psychological, spiritual necessity. So where did you learn that rest is quitting? That stopping means failure? That you must keep going no matter what? Maybe it came from your family. Maybe you watched a parent work themselves to exhaustion, never complaining, never stopping. And you learned, this is what commitment looks like. This is what strength looks like. This is what love looks like. You sacrifice yourself. You keep going. You never quit. Maybe it came from your culture. Messages about productivity and hustle and grinding and never giving up. No pain, no gain. Sleep when you're dead. Winners never quit. You absorbed these messages until they became your internal operating system. Maybe it came from survival. Maybe there was a time in your life when stopping genuinely wasn't an option. When you had to keep going because there was no one else to do it. No safety net to catch you. No choice but to push through. And what was once necessary for survival became your default way of being. Maybe it came from trauma. Maybe you learned that letting your guard down meant getting hurt. That vulnerability meant danger. That the only way to stay safe was to stay vigilant, stay active, stay in control. Rest became associated with risk. Or maybe it's more recent. Maybe you're in a life situation right now where stopping feels impossible. Real responsibilities. Real people depending on you. Real consequences if you don't keep going. And so rest feels like a luxury you genuinely can't afford. Whatever the origin, the belief is there now, deep in your bones, in your nervous system, in the way you relate to yourself and your limits and your needs. The belief that says, rest is quitting, and you're not a quitter. Part of why this belief persists is that we confuse rest with surrender. We think they're the same thing, but they're not. Surrender is giving up on what matters to you. Surrender is walking away from your commitments. Surrender is deciding that something is too hard and you're not going to try anymore. Rest is honoring your limits while maintaining your commitment. Rest is pausing to restore your capacity. Rest is strategic withdrawal so you can re-engage more effectively. Surrender is permanent. Rest is temporary. Surrender is about the goal. Rest is about the journey. Surrender says, I can't do this. Rest says, I can't do this right now, but I will be able to after I restore. But if you've been taught that any stopping is weakness, if you've internalized the message that you must keep going no matter what, then you can't see the difference. All stopping looks like quitting. All rest looks like failure. And so you push yourself past your limits. You override your body's signals. You ignore your need for pause. Because you're not a quitter. You're committed. You're strong. But actually, ignoring your need for rest isn't strength. It's self-destruction. It's the slow erosion of the very capacity you're trying to maintain. True strength includes knowing when to stop. True commitment includes honoring your limits. True courage includes admitting when you need rest. Tonight is about giving you permission. Permission to rest without believing you're quitting. Permission to stop without believing you're failing. Permission to honor your exhaustion without believing you're weak. We're going to explore why rest feels so threatening. We're going to examine the beliefs that keep you going when you should be resting. We're going to discover what rest actually is, and what it isn't. We're going to reframe rest from something shameful into something strategic. From something weak into something essential. From something you have to earn into something you're allowed to receive. And we're going to help you find a way to rest deeply tonight while still honoring your commitments. While still caring about what you care about. While still being the dedicated, responsible, caring person you are. Because that's the truth. You can rest and still care. You can stop and still be committed. You can honor your limits and still be strong. In fact, rest is how you maintain your capacity to care. Rest is how you sustain your commitment. Rest is how you preserve your strength for the long haul. So let's begin right here. Let's start practicing the difference between quitting and resting. Quitting would be giving up on sleep entirely, deciding you don't need it. Pushing through the night to keep working, keep doing, keep going. Resting is lying here, allowing your body to be horizontal, letting your muscles release, giving yourself this time for restoration. You're not quitting by being here. You're not failing by lying down. You're not weak for needing sleep. You're being strategic. You're being wise. You're honoring your human need for rest so that tomorrow you can show up with capacity, with energy, with the resources you need to continue. Let your shoulders soften with this understanding. Let your jaw release with this permission. Let your whole body settle into the recognition. Rest is not quitting. Feel the surface beneath you. Feel how it's holding your full weight. You don't have to hold yourself up right now. You can let yourself be held. Notice your breath, the natural rhythm of it. You're not making it happen. It's happening on its own. Your body knows how to breathe. It knows how to rest. You just have to let it. You have permission to stop, to pause, to rest. Not because everything's done. Not because you've earned it. Not because you have no more responsibilities, but because you're human, and humans need rest, and rest is not quitting. It's the very thing that allows you to not quit. It's how you sustain your journey. It's how you keep going when the road is long. Let's start by understanding why rest feels so wrong to you. Why stopping, even for sleep, can trigger feelings of guilt or shame or fear. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness, that equates productivity with worth, that treats rest as something to minimize, not honor. From a young age, you're taught to measure your value by your output, how much you accomplish, how many things you check off your list, how busy you are. The busier you are, the more important you must be. The more productive you are, the more valuable. This creates what psychologists call achievement orientation, the tendency to derive your self-worth primarily from what you accomplish, not from who you are, not from your inherent worth as a human being, but from what you do. And when your worth is tied to your productivity, rest becomes threatening. Because when you're resting, you're not producing. When you're not producing, you're not generating worth. When you're not generating worth, you're worthless. This is unconscious. Usually, you wouldn't consciously say, "I'm worthless" when I rest. But the feeling is there. The guilt, the anxiety, the sense that you should be doing something, that resting is wasting time, that you're only valuable when you're productive. And our modern world reinforces this constantly. Rise and grind. Hustle harder. No days off. These aren't just slogans, they're value statements. They tell you that the good people, the successful people, the worthy people never stop. They're always going, always doing, always achieving. But this is a relatively recent phenomenon. For most of human history, Rest was understood as essential. Cultures had built-in rest periods, Sabbath days, feast days, seasonal rhythms of work and rest. The idea that you should be productive all the time would have seemed absurd. Your body hasn't evolved to match our modern productivity culture. Your body still operates on those ancient rhythms. It still needs rest. Regular rest. Deep rest. But your mind has been colonized by messages that say rest is laziness. Rest is weakness. Rest is failure. Rest also feels like failure because you compare yourself to others who seem to need less of it. You see people who appear to be constantly active, constantly productive, constantly going, and you think, why can't I do that? Why do I need so much rest? What's wrong with me? But here's what you don't see. You don't see their full picture. You don't see their private exhaustion. You don't see the toll their lack of rest is taking. You don't see the medications they're taking, the relationships that are suffering, the health issues they're developing. You see the public performance, the productivity, the accomplishment. You don't see the cost. And even if some people genuinely do function well on less rest than you, so what? People have different capacities, different constitutions, different needs. Your need for rest doesn't make you defective. It makes you human. But when you're in the comparison trap, when you're measuring yourself against others, your need for rest feels like a personal failing. Like you're not as strong, not as capable, not as worthy as people who seem to need less. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You don't need to justify your need for rest. You don't need to prove that it's legitimate. You just need to honor it. Your body's need for rest is valid simply because it's your body's need. There's also a fear that if you rest, you'll fall behind. Everyone else will keep going while you pause, and you'll lose ground, lose momentum, lose your place. This fear is particularly strong in competitive environments. In careers where advancement requires constant visibility. In cultures where if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And sometimes this fear is not entirely unfounded. Sometimes the systems you're in genuinely do penalize rest. Do reward constant availability. Do favor people who don't have boundaries around their time and energy. But here's what's also true. Running yourself into the ground doesn't actually help you stay ahead. Chronic exhaustion doesn't make you more competitive. It makes you less effective, less creative, less able to handle challenges. The people who sustain success over the long term aren't the ones who never rest. They're the ones who rest strategically, who understand that rest is how you maintain peak performance, who know that recovery is when adaptation happens, when growth occurs, when you actually get stronger. Athletes understand this. You don't build muscle during the workout. You build muscle during the rest period after the workout. The workout creates the stimulus. The rest creates the adaptation. The same is true for cognitive and emotional capacity. You don't get smarter by thinking constantly. You don't get more emotionally resilient by never pausing. The work creates the challenge. The rest creates the growth. So the fear that resting will make you fall behind is backwards. Resting is how you maintain your capacity to keep going. Never resting is what makes you fall behind, because you're operating at a fraction of your potential. Rest feels like failure because we confuse it with laziness. We think they're the same thing, but they're fundamentally different. Laziness is avoiding necessary work because you don't want to do it. It's prioritizing comfort over responsibility. It's neglecting what needs to be done because you'd rather do something easier. Rest is honoring your body's need for recovery. It's recognizing that you've reached your limit and you need to pause. It's doing what's necessary to restore your capacity to engage. Laziness is about avoiding. Rest is about restoring. Laziness is driven by not wanting to engage. Rest is driven by not being able to engage effectively. Laziness undermines your goals. Rest supports them. But if you grew up with messages that conflated the two, if I need rest was met with you're just being lazy, then you carry that confusion now. Any impulse to rest triggers the shame associated with laziness. And so you override your body's legitimate need for rest because you're trying to prove you're not lazy. You push through exhaustion to demonstrate your commitment. You deprive yourself of restoration to avoid being judged as weak or unmotivated. But this is based on a false equivalence. Honoring your need for rest is not laziness. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. It's understanding that you're a biological organism with biological needs, not a robot that should be able to run indefinitely. For many people, rest carries moral weight. It's not just practically difficult, it's morally wrong. There's an implicit belief that suffering is virtuous, that ease is suspect, that if you're not struggling, you're not trying hard enough, that the right way to live is to be constantly pushing yourself, constantly sacrificing, constantly choosing the hard path. This often comes from religious or cultural backgrounds that emphasized self-denial, that taught you to be suspicious of pleasure, of comfort, of anything that feels too easy. Suffering builds character. The easy path is the wrong path. And rest feels easy. Rest feels good. Rest is pleasurable in its way. So it must be wrong. It must be indulgent. It must be something to minimize or feel guilty about. But this moral framework is deeply flawed. Suffering for its own sake doesn't build character. It builds trauma. Constant struggle doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you exhausted. Denying your needs doesn't make you holy. It makes you depleted. Rest is not a moral failing. It's a biological necessity. Your need for sleep, for pause, for restoration is not something to be ashamed of. It's part of being human. And actually, taking care of yourself, honoring your limits, resting when you need rest, is more ethical than destroying yourself through constant overwork. Because when you're depleted, you can't show up well for others. You can't be kind, patient, present, generous. You have nothing left to give. Rest is how you maintain your capacity to be a good person, to show up for what matters, to have something to offer the world. For some of you, never resting has become part of your identity. You're the one who can handle anything, who never complains, who keeps going when everyone else stops. This identity might have brought you recognition, praise, a sense of being special or valuable. You're so strong. You're so dedicated. I don't know how you do it all. And now, resting would mean losing that identity. It would mean admitting you're not superhuman. It would mean revealing that you have limits like everyone else. This is terrifying, because if you're not the tireless one, if you're not the one who never stops, then who are you? What makes you special? What makes you valuable? But this identity is built on an unsustainable premise. You are human. You do have limits. And performing superhuman capacity by destroying yourself isn't actually admirable. It's tragic. Your worth doesn't come from being tireless. It comes from being yourself. Your full, complete, limited human self. And that self needs rest. Honoring that need doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you honest. You can be strong and rest. You can be dedicated and rest. You can be valuable and rest. These things are not contradictions. They're complements. So right now, let's begin to question these beliefs. Not to immediately discard them. Some of them might have partial truth. But to examine them. To see them clearly. What do you believe about rest? Not what you think you should believe. What you actually believe, deep down. Maybe it's, rest is lazy. Maybe it's, strong people don't need rest. Maybe it's, if I rest, everything will fall apart. Maybe it's, I don't deserve rest until everything's done. Whatever the belief is, just notice it. Don't judge yourself for having it. These beliefs were taught to you. They were learned. And what's learned can be unlearned. And then ask, is this actually true? Is rest really lazy? Do strong people really never rest? Will everything actually fall apart if you pause? Do you really have to earn the right to honor your body's needs? You don't have to answer these questions definitively tonight. Just let them be there. Let them begin to create some space around the beliefs. Some room for questioning. Because beliefs that are never examined control you. But beliefs that are brought into awareness can begin to shift, can begin to release their grip. Now let's look more closely at the specific beliefs that keep you going when you need rest. The stories your mind tells you about what will happen if you stop. One of the most common beliefs is that you're the linchpin. That everything depends on you. That if you stop, if you rest, if you're not actively managing and doing and controlling, everything will fall apart. This belief often comes from experience. Maybe there was a time when things genuinely did fall apart when you weren't actively holding them together. Maybe you were in a role where everything really did depend on you. Maybe you learned through hard experience that you couldn't rely on anyone else. And so you internalized, I have to do everything. I can't trust anyone else. If I stop, disaster happens. But here's what's often true. This belief has become outdated. What was true once isn't true now. Or what's true in some situations isn't true in all situations. Maybe you're still operating as if you're the only one who can handle things, but actually, others are capable. They just haven't had the chance to step up because you've been doing everything. Maybe you're catastrophizing what falling apart means. Yes, if you rest, some things might not get done exactly when you wanted. Some things might not happen exactly how you would have done them. But that's not the same as everything falling apart. That's just things being imperfect. And maybe the truth is, some things should fall apart. Some things you're holding together aren't actually your responsibility to hold. Some things need to collapse so they can reorganize into something more sustainable. But as long as you believe that your rest will cause catastrophe, you can't allow yourself to stop. So you keep going, keep holding, keep carrying what was never yours to carry alone. Another powerful belief: if you rest, it means you don't care about your work, about your goals, about the people depending on you. This belief equates care with constant action. It says, the measure of how much you care is how much you sacrifice, how hard you push yourself, how much you're willing to suffer. So resting becomes a betrayal. If you truly cared, you'd keep going. If you truly loved, you'd sacrifice yourself. If you were truly committed, you'd override your limits. But this confuses care with self-destruction. Yes, you care deeply. Yes, you're committed. But caring doesn't require destroying yourself. Love doesn't require exhausting yourself. Commitment doesn't require ignoring your needs. In fact, the opposite is true. You can't sustain care if you don't rest. You can't maintain commitment if you're depleted. You can't show up for what matters if you're running on empty. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh teaches about interbeing, the understanding that we're all connected. That taking care of yourself is taking care of others. That your well-being and others' well-being are not separate. When you rest, when you restore yourself, you're not abandoning your care for others. You're ensuring you have the capacity to care. You're honoring the interconnection between your well-being and everyone else's. Rest doesn't mean you don't care. Rest is how you maintain your capacity to care. Many people carry the belief that rest must be earned, that you have to deserve it, that you can only rest once you've accomplished enough, done enough, proven yourself enough. This creates an impossible standard, because enough is never defined. How much do you have to accomplish to earn rest? The goalpost keeps moving. There's always one more thing. Always something else that needs to be done first. So you end up perpetually trying to earn what you already need. Like trying to earn oxygen. Like trying to deserve water. Rest is a biological need, not a reward for good behavior. You don't have to earn the right to sleep. You don't have to prove you deserve restoration. Your body needs rest simply because you're alive, because you're human. That's the only qualification required. But if you learned that love was conditional, that you had to be good enough, do enough, achieve enough to deserve care, then you apply that same framework to self-care. You make rest conditional on worthiness. And so you withhold from yourself what you need most. You keep raising the bar for what would make you worthy of rest. And you exhaust yourself trying to reach a standard that was never fair to begin with. What if rest isn't something you earn? What if it's something you're allowed to receive simply because you need it? What if your worth isn't determined by your productivity? What if you're valuable simply for existing, for being human, for being yourself? There's often a belief that rest is wasting time. That time spent resting is time that could have been used for something productive, something valuable, something that moves you toward your goals. This belief sees rest as empty, as nothing happening, as lost time. But rest isn't empty. Rest is when crucial processes happen. Your body repairs tissue. Your brain consolidates memories. Your emotions get processed. Your immune system does its work. Creativity incubates. Insights emerge. Rest isn't the absence of productivity. It's a different kind of productivity. The productivity of restoration. The productivity of becoming capable again. But this requires a shift in perspective. From seeing time as valuable only when you're doing something visible, to understanding that rest is doing something essential. It's restoring your capacity to do everything else. Many people operate on a perpetual "I'll rest when." The sentence gets completed different ways, but the structure is the same. Rest is always in the future, always contingent on something being different. I'll rest when this project is done. I'll rest when things calm down. I'll rest when I retire. I'll rest when the kids are older. I'll rest when I've accomplished my goals. But the project finishes and there's another project. Things don't calm down. Retirement is decades away. The kids get older but bring different challenges. The goals shift and expand. So, "I'll rest when" becomes "I'll never rest," because the condition is never met. There's always a reason why now isn't the right time. This is a form of self-abandonment. You're telling yourself, your needs can wait. Other things are more important. You'll tend to yourself later, but later never comes. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time to rest. There will always be things demanding your attention. The choice to rest is never convenient. It's always a choice to prioritize your needs even when external demands are present. "I'll rest when" needs to become "I'll rest now," because now is when I need it. Not because everything's done. Not because circumstances are perfect, but because rest can't wait for perfect conditions. Underneath many of these beliefs is a deeper fear. If you're not useful, you don't have value. If you're not producing, contributing, doing something for others, you don't deserve to exist. This is an existential terror, a fear of being disposable, of being worthless, of being unwanted. And rest triggers this fear because when you're resting, you're not being useful. You're not producing value for others. You're just being. And if your worth is tied to your usefulness, then just being feels dangerously close to worthlessness. But this is one of the most damaging beliefs a person can hold, because it makes your existence conditional. It says you only have a right to exist if you're serving some purpose for others. But you're not a tool. You're not a means to an end. You're a person. And people have inherent worth, not because of what they do, because of what they are. You would never tell a child that their worth depends on their productivity. You wouldn't tell someone you love that they only matter if they're useful. You know, on some level, that human worth isn't conditional. But maybe you don't extend that understanding to yourself. Maybe you hold yourself to a standard you'd never apply to anyone else. What if you're valuable simply for existing? What if you don't need to justify your worth through constant usefulness? What if resting, simply being, without producing, is a legitimate way to spend time? So right now, which of these beliefs resonates most for you? Maybe it's the belief that everything will fall apart. Maybe it's the fear that rest means you don't care. Maybe it's the sense that you haven't earned it yet. Maybe it's all of them. Just notice which one feels most true, most powerful, most present in your experience. And then, gently, ask yourself, where did this belief come from? When did I learn this? Who taught me that I couldn't rest? You don't need definitive answers. Just get curious. Just begin to see these beliefs as beliefs, not as absolute truths, but as learned patterns. And if they're learned, they can be unlearned. If they were taught, they can be questioned. If they came from somewhere, they can be released. Tonight is one small step in that unlearning. One moment of resting despite the beliefs. One experience of stopping without everything falling apart. One piece of evidence that rest is not quitting. Now let's shift from what rest isn't to what rest actually is. Because if we're going to reframe rest from quitting to strength, we need to understand what rest truly means. At its most basic, rest is restoration. It's the process by which your body and mind return to baseline after exertion. When you use your muscles, they accumulate metabolic waste. They experience micro tears. They deplete their energy stores. Rest is when this damage gets repaired. When waste gets cleared, when energy gets replenished. When you use your brain, you deplete neurotransmitters. You accumulate cellular waste products. Your neurons need time to restore their chemical balance, to clear out debris, to rebuild resources. This happens during rest, especially during sleep. Your glymphatic system, the brain's waste clearance system, is most active during sleep. Your body releases growth hormone for tissue repair. Your immune system does crucial maintenance. So rest isn't nothing. Rest is active restoration. It's when your body undoes the damage of activity and rebuilds capacity for future activity. Without rest, restoration doesn't happen. You accumulate damage. You deplete resources. You slowly deteriorate. Rest is how you prevent breakdown, how you maintain yourself as a functioning organism. This is not optional. This is not something you can skip because you're strong or dedicated. This is biology. And biology doesn't care about your beliefs or your will or your commitment. Your body needs rest or it breaks down. Rest is also integration. It's when your brain processes the day's experiences, consolidates learning, makes sense of what happened. During activity, you're taking in information, experiences, stimuli, but you're not fully processing it in the moment. You're reacting, responding, moving on to the next thing. Rest is when integration happens, when your brain reviews what occurred, decides what's important enough to store as long-term memory, makes connections between new information and existing knowledge, extracts meaning from experience. This is why sleep is so crucial for learning. You don't actually learn during the studying. You learn during the sleep after studying. When your brain takes the information you encountered and integrates it into your neural networks. And it's not just cognitive integration. It's emotional integration too. Processing feelings, making sense of social interactions, working through conflicts. This happens during rest, particularly during REM sleep when your brain is actively processing emotional content. So when you skip rest, you're not just physically depleting yourself. You're also preventing integration, preventing learning, preventing the emotional processing that keeps you psychologically healthy. Rest is how you become wiser, how you grow from your experiences, how you extract the lessons that make you more capable tomorrow than you were today. Rest is a reset button. It's how you return to baseline, how you interrupt patterns of activation and stress. Your nervous system has two main modes: sympathetic, activation, and parasympathetic, rest and digest. During activity, especially stressful activity, your sympathetic nervous system dominates. Your body is in action mode. But you can't stay in action mode indefinitely. Your body needs time in parasympathetic mode. Time when your nervous system isn't activated, when your stress response isn't engaged, when you're not in fight or flight. Rest is how you access parasympathetic mode, how you tell your nervous system, the crisis is over, the threat has passed, you can stand down now. And this reset is essential, because chronic sympathetic activation, being in stress mode all the time, causes tremendous damage. It suppresses your immune system, elevates inflammation, damages your cardiovascular system, impairs cognitive function. Rest interrupts this. It gives your nervous system permission to downshift, to move from high alert to ease, from vigilance to safety. Without regular resets, your baseline shifts. You become chronically activated. Your body forgets what true rest feels like, and you start operating from a state of constant stress, which eventually breaks you. Rest is preventive medicine. It's how you avoid the problems that come from chronic depletion. When you rest adequately, you're less likely to get sick. Your immune system functions better. You're less vulnerable to infection, to illness, to chronic disease. When you rest adequately, you're less likely to burn out. Burnout isn't caused by hard work. It's caused by hard work without sufficient recovery. Rest is how you prevent the complete exhaustion and cynicism that characterize burnout. When you rest adequately, you're less likely to make catastrophic errors. Fatigue impairs judgment. Sleep deprivation is comparable to intoxication in terms of cognitive impairment. Rest is how you maintain the mental clarity to make good decisions. When you rest adequately, you're less likely to damage your relationships. Exhaustion makes you irritable, impatient, emotionally unavailable. Rest is how you maintain the emotional resources to be kind, present, loving. So rest isn't just recovery from problems. Rest is prevention of problems. It's an investment in your future capacity. It's how you maintain your health, your effectiveness, your relationships, your well-being. The ancient Chinese text, the Tao Te Ching, says, "Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear?" Rest is that patience, that waiting, that allowing things to settle so you can see clearly again. There's a crucial reframe that needs to happen. Rest is not the opposite of strength. Rest is a different form of strength. The person who pushes through exhaustion isn't stronger than the person who recognizes their limits and honors them. They're just operating from a different understanding of what strength means. In the old understanding, strength meant endurance. How long can you go? How much can you take? How far can you push before you break? But that understanding of strength is actually quite limited. It's the strength of a boulder, hard, immovable, enduring. And yes, boulders are strong. But boulders also crack under pressure. They erode. They break. There's another kind of strength. The strength of water. Water adapts. It flows around obstacles. It knows when to rush forward and when to pool in stillness. It knows when to crash in waves and when to rest in the depths. Water is incredibly powerful. It carves canyons. It shapes coastlines. It sustains all life. But it doesn't do this through constant force. It does it through cycles, through rhythm, through knowing when to move and when to be still. The Tao Te Ching teaches, nothing in the world is softer or weaker than water, yet nothing is better at overcoming the hard and strong. This is because nothing can replace it. When you rest, you're not being weak. You're being water. You're being adaptable. You're being sustainable. You're being wise. Rest is intelligent. It's not passive. It's not dumb. It's actually one of the most sophisticated responses you can have to exhaustion. Animals understand this instinctively. When a wild animal is injured, it doesn't push through. It doesn't force itself to keep hunting, keep moving, keep going. It finds a safe place. It rests. It allows its body to heal. This isn't laziness. This is survival intelligence. The animal that rests when injured is the one that lives to hunt another day. The one that keeps pushing dies. You have this same intelligence in you. Your body knows when it needs rest. Your nervous system knows when it's depleted. Your mind knows when it can't process anymore. But somewhere along the way, you learn to override this intelligence. You learn to ignore your body's signals. You learn to push through the messages saying stop, rest, restore. And maybe that override was necessary at some point. Maybe you were in a situation where stopping genuinely wasn't an option, where you had to push through to survive. But if you're lying here right now, if you're safe, if you have the option to rest, then the intelligent thing is to rest. The wise thing. The thing that ensures your long-term survival and well-being. Ignoring your body's need for rest isn't strength. It's ignoring intelligence. And ignoring intelligence is never wise. When you rest, you're also practicing self-trust. You're trusting your own assessment that you need rest. Trusting that you know your limits. Trusting that you're the authority on your own body and mind. Many people struggle with this. They don't trust their own sense of needing rest. They think, maybe I'm just being lazy. Maybe I could push through if I tried harder. Maybe I don't really need this. This lack of self-trust often comes from having your needs invalidated, from being told you were exaggerating, being dramatic, not trying hard enough. So you learned not to trust your own experience. But your exhaustion is real. Your depletion is real. Your body's signals are valid information, not something to be overruled by external standards or internalized criticism. So when you choose to rest, you're practicing self-trust. You're saying, I believe my own experience. I trust my assessment. I honor what I know to be true about my state. This is radical in a culture that constantly tells you not to trust yourself, that tells you to push harder, do more, ignore your limits. To trust yourself enough to rest is an act of rebellion, an act of self-loyalty. And the more you practice this self-trust, the stronger it becomes. Each time you honor your need for rest, you're building the neural pathway of self-trust. You're learning that you can rely on yourself, that you're worth listening to. Rest is not just physical restoration. It's psychological affirmation. It's you telling yourself, I trust you. I believe you. Your needs matter. Rest is strategic. It's not random withdrawal. It's intentional pause for a specific purpose, to maintain and enhance your capacity. Athletes understand this deeply. You don't train every day at maximum intensity. You cycle periods of stress and recovery. The stress creates the stimulus for growth. The recovery is when the growth actually happens. Elite performers in any field understand this. Musicians don't practice for 18 hours straight. They practice in focus sessions with rest between. Writers don't write continuously without break. They write, rest, let ideas incubate, write again. Rest is part of the performance strategy, not a deviation from it, not a concession to weakness, but a deliberate component of how you maintain peak capacity over time. So when you rest, you're not quitting, you're being strategic. You're employing the same approach that elite performers use. You're understanding that capacity isn't just about how hard you can push, it's about how well you can recover. And the people who sustain high performance over decades aren't the ones who never rest. They're the ones who rest intelligently, who understand their limits, who honor the cycle of stress and recovery. Rest is what separates sustainable excellence from spectacular burnout. Finally, rest is an act of self-respect. It's treating yourself as a being who has inherent worth and whose needs matter. When you override your need for rest, when you push through exhaustion, when you ignore your body's signals, you're communicating something to yourself. You're saying, "My needs don't matter. My well-being is not a priority. I'm a means to an end, not an end in myself." But when you honor your need for rest, when you give yourself what you need even when it's inconvenient, when you treat your limits as legitimate, you're communicating something different. You're saying, "I matter. My well-being matters. I'm worth caring for." This is not selfish. This is basic self-respect. It's the foundation of all healthy relating, to yourself and to others. You can't truly respect others if you don't respect yourself. You can't truly care for others if you treat yourself as disposable. Your relationship with yourself sets the template for all your other relationships. So rest is practice in self-respect. It's learning to value yourself enough to meet your own needs. It's understanding that you're not just a tool for accomplishing things. You're a person deserving of care. So right now, notice how you're resting. Notice the act of lying here, being horizontal, allowing pause. This is restoration happening. Your body is repairing. Your brain is integrating. Your nervous system is resetting. This is prevention. You're avoiding the damage of chronic depletion. You're maintaining your capacity. This is strategy. You're employing the same approach elite performers use. You're honoring the cycle of activity and recovery. This is self-respect. You're treating yourself as someone whose needs matter, someone worth caring for. This is not quitting. This is wisdom. This is strength. This is exactly what you should be doing. Now we're going to completely reframe rest. From weakness to strength. From quitting to strategy. From something you do when you can't keep going to something you do to ensure you can keep going. Here's the paradox. Rest is how you achieve more, not less. Rest is how you sustain effort, not how you interrupt it. This seems backwards if you're thinking linearly. If you rest, you're not working. If you're not working, you're not making progress. Therefore, rest means less progress. But this ignores diminishing returns. It ignores the fact that exhausted effort is inefficient effort. It ignores that you need recovery to maintain capacity. Research on productivity consistently shows that working more hours doesn't mean accomplishing more. After a certain point, additional hours lead to declining output. You're putting in more time but producing less. The same task that takes you 2 hours when you're rested might take you 5 hours when you're exhausted. Same task, same you, but drastically different efficiency based on your state of restoration. So the paradox resolves. Rest doesn't reduce accomplishment. Rest enables accomplishment. By maintaining your effectiveness. By preventing the degradation that comes from chronic depletion. The people who accomplish the most aren't the ones working the most hours. They're the ones working the right hours, productive hours when they're actually capable, and resting the rest of the time. In a world where most people don't rest adequately, rest becomes a competitive advantage. While others are burning out, you're sustaining. While others are making mistakes from exhaustion, you're maintaining clarity. While others are depleting their health and relationships, you're preserving yours. The marathon runner doesn't try to sprint for 26 miles. They pace themselves. They understand that the way to win a marathon is not maximum effort every moment. It's sustainable effort that you can maintain for the entire distance. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. The challenges you face don't resolve in days or weeks. They unfold over years, decades. And the way you sustain performance over that time span is not by pushing harder. It's by resting smarter. So while others are glorifying hustle and grind, while they're sacrificing sleep and pushing through exhaustion, you're employing a more sophisticated strategy. You're understanding that rest is part of performance. That recovery is what enables sustained excellence. This requires confidence. It requires trusting that doing less in a sustainable way will outperform doing more in an unsustainable way. And that's counterintuitive in a culture that equates hours with dedication. But the evidence is clear. Across every domain, athletics, academics, business, creativity, the highest performers are not the ones who never rest. They're the ones who rest strategically, who understand recovery as essential, not optional. There's tremendous strength in knowing your limits, in being able to recognize, this is my capacity, this is where I need to stop, this is when I need rest. This requires self-awareness, requires honesty, requires the courage to admit you're not infinite, that you have boundaries, that you need care. Weakness is not having limits. Everyone has limits. Weakness is not acknowledging them, pushing past them, pretending they don't exist until you break. Strength is knowing your limits and honoring them, is working up to your capacity and then resting, is being honest about what you can sustain and what you can't. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Part of that power is recognizing what's within your capacity and what's not, and having the wisdom to rest when you've reached your limit. This is mature strength, not the bravado of pretending you're superhuman, but the grounded confidence of knowing yourself, knowing what you need, and having the self-respect to provide it. Rest is what builds resilience. Resilience isn't about never getting tired. It's about being able to recover when you do. Resilient materials aren't rigid. They're flexible. They can be stressed and return to their original shape. They have elasticity. Psychological resilience works the same way. You will face stress. You will be challenged. You will be pushed to your limits. Resilience is your ability to experience that stress and recover from it, to return to baseline, to be okay again. People who never rest aren't resilient. They are brittle. They can handle stress for a while through sheer force, but eventually they break, because they never recover. They accumulate damage until they shatter. True resilience includes rest, includes knowing when to push and when to pause, includes understanding that recovery is what allows you to face the next challenge. So rest isn't weakness. Rest is resilience. It's how you maintain your capacity to handle what life brings. It takes courage to rest, especially when everyone around you is pushing through, especially when the culture says you should keep going, especially when your own mind says rest is quitting. It takes courage to say, "I'm stopping," not because everything's done, not because I've given up, but because I need rest and rest matters. It takes courage to disappoint people, to not be available, to let some things not happen because you're prioritizing your restoration. It takes courage to go against the current, to rest in a world that glorifies exhaustion, to prioritize your well-being when the message is that sacrifice is virtue. But this courage is strength. It's the strength of conviction, the strength of knowing what you need and honoring it even when it's hard, even when it's countercultural, even when it costs you approval. The ancient text, the Tao Te Ching, teaches, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom, mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. Resting when you need rest, despite all the internal and external voices telling you to keep going, is mastering yourself, is true power. Rest is long-term thinking. It's prioritizing sustainability over immediate output. Short-term thinking says, "What can I accomplish right now? How much can I get done today? How hard can I push?" Long-term thinking says, "How can I maintain my capacity over years and decades? What do I need to do now to ensure I'm still functional, still capable, still healthy far into the future?" Rest is long-term thinking. It's sacrificing some immediate productivity for sustained capacity. It's understanding that the goal isn't to maximize today's output. It's to remain capable tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now. This is strategic thinking. This is mature thinking. This is the kind of thinking that separates people who burn bright and burn out from people who sustain their light over a lifetime. You're not just trying to survive this week. You're trying to live a full life, a long life, a life where you remain engaged, capable, effective, joyful. And that requires rest, regular rest, prioritized rest. Rest that's non-negotiable because your long-term capacity depends on it. So right now, reframe what you're doing. You're not failing by lying here. You're being strategic. You're not quitting by resting. You're ensuring you can continue tomorrow. You're not weak for needing sleep. You're intelligent enough to understand that capacity requires recovery. This is strength. This is wisdom. This is long-term thinking. Let your body settle deeper with this understanding. Let your breath slow with this permission. You're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're honoring your limits. You're investing in your capacity. You're being strategic about your well-being. This is not the easy path. It's the wise path. And there's strength in wisdom. Now we arrive at the final piece. How to rest while still caring. How to stop without giving up. How to honor your limits while maintaining your commitments. You can rest and care. These are not mutually exclusive. They are complementary. You can lie here, resting deeply, while still caring about your work, while still being committed to your goals, while still loving the people in your life, while still honoring your responsibilities. Rest doesn't erase care. Rest doesn't cancel commitment. Rest is how you sustain both. This is important because the fear that rest means you don't care is what keeps you from resting. If you believe you have to choose between resting and caring, you'll choose caring every time. Because you do care deeply. But it's a false choice. You don't have to choose. You can hold both. You can care about your work and rest from your work. You can be committed to your goals and take breaks from pursuing them. You can love deeply and still prioritize your own restoration. This is the both and, not either or, not rest or care, but rest and care, together, integrated. In fact, resting is responsible. It's taking responsibility for maintaining your capacity to show up. If you have people depending on you, if you have work that matters, if you have commitments you've made, then depleting yourself is irresponsible. Because depleted, you can't fulfill those commitments well. Resting is how you ensure you can meet your responsibilities. How you maintain the capacity to show up for what matters. How you honor your commitments by not destroying the person who made them. So when you rest, you're not abandoning your responsibilities. You're taking responsibility for your ability to be responsible. This reframe is crucial. Rest isn't shirking duty. Rest is performing the duty of self-maintenance so you can continue performing all your other duties. Caring doesn't require constant action. You can care deeply about something while not actively working on it every moment. A mother cares about her children even when she's sleeping. Her care doesn't disappear when she rests. The sleep is how she maintains her capacity to care for them when she's awake. An artist cares about their work even when they're not creating. The care persists. The breaks from creating are how they refill the well, how they gather the energy and inspiration to create again. You can trust that your care remains even when your action pauses, that your commitment endures even when your effort cycles, that your love persists even when you're resting. Care is not measured by constant activity. Care is measured by sustained engagement over time. And sustained engagement requires periods of rest. So you don't have to prove your care through exhausting yourself. You can trust that your care is real, is deep, is enduring, even when you're resting. If you have people who look to you, children, students, employees, friends, then how you treat yourself teaches them how they should treat themselves. If you never rest, if you push through exhaustion, if you model that your needs don't matter, they learn that their needs shouldn't matter either. But if you rest when you need rest, if you honor your limits, if you model that well-being is a priority, they learn to do the same. So resting isn't just about you. It's about the culture you create, the example you set, the permission you give others to care for themselves. Your rest is teaching. It's showing that it's possible to be dedicated and rested, to care deeply and honor limits, to be responsible and also self-respecting. This is leadership, not the leadership of tireless endurance, but the leadership of sustainable engagement. The leadership of modeling healthy relationship with work, with care, with yourself. One of the skills you develop through honoring rest is discernment. The ability to distinguish between different types of tiredness, different types of resistance, different types of need. Not all exhaustion means you need to stop completely. Sometimes you need a pause. Sometimes you need a shift. Sometimes you need to continue, but at a different pace or with different support. And not all resistance to work means you're depleted. Sometimes resistance is meaningful. It's telling you something about the work itself, that it's not aligned with your values, that it's not the right time, that something needs to change. Learning to listen to these nuances, this is discernment. And it only develops through practice, through paying attention to what different types of tiredness feel like, what rest actually addresses and what it doesn't. There's physical exhaustion. Your body is depleted. Rest addresses this directly. Sleep, stillness, physical restoration. There's mental exhaustion. Your cognitive resources are depleted. This needs a different kind of rest. Stopping thought-intensive work. Engaging in activities that don't require problem-solving or decision-making. There's emotional exhaustion. Your capacity for feeling, for caring, for being present to others' needs is depleted. This needs emotional rest, boundaries, solitude. Release from the demand to emotionally perform. And there's existential exhaustion, the deeper tiredness that comes from feeling like your life lacks meaning or purpose. This isn't solved by physical rest alone. It needs reflection, realignment, sometimes radical change. When you practice resting, you start to develop discernment about which type of exhaustion you're experiencing and what each type needs. This is sophisticated self-knowledge. This is emotional intelligence. This is not weakness, it's wisdom. Here's something important. The goal of rest is not permanent withdrawal. The goal is to restore your capacity for engagement. You're not resting so you can rest forever. You're resting so you can return to your life with presence, with energy, with the capacity to engage with what matters. This is why rest is not quitting. Quitting is permanent withdrawal. Quitting is deciding you're done with engagement. Rest is temporary withdrawal in service of continued engagement. Think of it like a musician. When a musician pauses between notes, they're not quitting the song. The pause is part of the song. It creates the rhythm. It gives the notes meaning. It allows the listener to hear what was just played. Your rest is like that. It's a pause in the music of your life. It's not the end of the song. It's what makes the song beautiful. What makes it sustainable. What allows the next notes to be played with clarity and intention. So you rest tonight not because you're done with life, but because you want to engage with life tomorrow. Because you care enough about your work, your relationships, your purpose to maintain your capacity for them. Rest is how you honor what matters by honoring yourself. It's how you prepare to show up fully, to be present, to have something to offer. Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up. You'll re-enter your life. And if you've rested well tonight, you'll enter it with more of yourself, with more capacity, with more presence. That's the purpose of rest. Not to escape life, but to meet life from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Finally, let yourself rest without needing rest to be perfect, without needing tonight to solve everything. You might not fall asleep immediately. You might wake up during the night. You might still feel tired in the morning. Rest isn't always a complete reset that makes everything better. But it's still valuable. It's still restorative. It's still what you need right now. Let rest be imperfect. Let tonight be what it is. Let yourself lie here, breathing, being, allowing rest to happen in whatever way it happens. You don't have to rest perfectly to deserve rest. You don't have to be good at resting for it to count. You just have to be here, present to this moment, allowing this pause. And that's enough. You being here, choosing rest, honoring your need, that's enough. That's the practice. That's the wisdom. Often the things that make rest feel like quitting are connected to your values. You value commitment, so rest feels like betrayal. You value contribution, so rest feels selfish. You value strength, so rest feels weak. But actually, rest aligns with your values. It doesn't contradict them. If you value commitment, rest is how you sustain commitment over time. You can't maintain dedication if you burn out. If you value contribution, rest is how you ensure you have something to contribute. You can't give from an empty well. If you value strength, rest is how you build strength. You don't get stronger by constantly depleting. You get stronger through cycles of stress and recovery. So rest isn't against your values. Rest is in service of your values. It's how you live them sustainably. Let yourself feel that now. Your rest tonight is not betraying what matters to you. It's honoring what matters by ensuring you can continue to engage with it. Resting well is a practice. It's not just the absence of activity. It's the presence of restoration. Right now, you're practicing resting well. You're not just lying here physically while your mind races with guilt and worry. You're actually allowing rest, giving yourself permission, releasing the belief that rest is quitting. Notice your body, how it's sinking more deeply into the bed, how your breath has slowed, how muscles you didn't realize were tense are beginning to soften. This is your body receiving the message. It's safe to rest. You're allowed to stop. This is not quitting. And your mind, notice if there's a little more space, a little more ease, a little less pressure to be doing something. You're learning that you can lie here, resting, and the world continues. Your care doesn't disappear. Your commitments don't dissolve. You're still you. You've just paused. This is the practice. Over and over, choosing rest, allowing rest, receiving rest, until it becomes natural. Until rest doesn't feel like quitting. Until you can rest without guilt, without fear, without the sense that you're failing. Finally, trust the cycle. Work and rest. Activity and recovery. Engagement and pause. You're not meant to be in one mode all the time. You're meant to cycle. This is nature. This is how everything works. The earth cycles through seasons. Day cycles into night. The tide goes out and comes in. Your heartbeat is a cycle of contraction and relaxation. You are nature too. You have cycles. You need periods of activity and periods of rest. This is not weakness. This is biological reality. So trust that you will be active again, that your rest now enables your engagement later, that the cycle serves you. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world." Your life is not a straight line of constant effort. It circles. It cycles. It includes expansion and contraction. Both are necessary. Rest now, trusting that activity will come again when you're restored. Trusting the cycle. Trusting your body. Trusting that rest is not quitting. It's preparation for continuing. And so we arrive at rest. Not the rest of giving up, but the rest of wisdom. The rest of strategy. The rest of honoring what's real. Tonight, you've explored why rest feels so threatening, why it seems like quitting when it's actually strength, why you resist what you need most. If this journey has helped you understand that rest is not failure, that stopping is not quitting, that honoring your limits is wisdom, not weakness, like and subscribe. This helps guide others to this restful space. Leave a comment on what brought you here tonight. Your story might be exactly what another tired soul needs to hear. Return whenever you need reminded that rest is allowed. But for now, just rest. You're not quitting by being here. You're not failing by lying down. You're not weak for needing sleep. You're being strategic. You're being wise. You're honoring the truth of your humanity. Take a moment to recognize the strength it took to be here tonight. The strength to stop even when your mind said keep going. The strength to rest even when you believed you hadn't earned it. The strength to honor your limits even when the culture says limits are weakness. This is real strength, not the performance of tireless endurance, but the grounded wisdom of knowing yourself, knowing what you need, and having the courage to provide it. You showed up for yourself tonight. You chose care over punishment. You chose wisdom over bravado. You chose rest over the belief that rest is quitting. And notice, your commitment hasn't disappeared. Your care hasn't vanished. You still care about your work, your people, your goals. Rest didn't erase any of that. It just gave you space to restore so you can continue engaging with what matters. You're not less dedicated because you're resting. You're more sustainable. You're caring for yourself so you can continue caring for everything else. Tomorrow, you'll wake up. You'll engage again. You'll show up for what matters. But tonight, you rest. And that rest is what makes tomorrow possible. For these remaining hours, you have complete permission to simply be. Not doing, not achieving, not proving anything. Just being here, in this body, in this breath, in this moment. Your worth is not contingent on your productivity. Your value is inherent. You matter because you exist, not because of what you do. So rest in that. Rest in your own inherent worth. Rest in the understanding that you're allowed to just be. Let everything settle now. All the effort, all the pushing, all the proving. Let it all settle down like sediment in water, until what remains is clear, still, peaceful. Nothing needs to happen right now. Nothing needs to be accomplished. Nothing needs to be proven. You can simply rest. Knowing that rest is not quitting. Knowing that stopping is strategic. Knowing that you're still committed. Still caring. Still strong. Even as you rest. Let your body sink deeper. Let your breath slow further. Let consciousness begin to dissolve at the edges. You're allowed to sleep. Sleep is not quitting. Sleep is preparation for continuing. Rest is strength. Rest is wisdom. Rest is allowed. I'll see you soon. May your rest be deep. And your dreams be gentle.